Hello, hello, hello. I'm popping in just for a few minutes to say hi and to ask you how you're doing. I went out for a beautiful walk today. It was long and exhaustive, but still, it was great. I went out with a friend, and it was during this conversation that I learned a few things, and this is what I want to share with you. First of all, you might know me, but maybe you don't. My name is Linda. I'm your Back in the Groove Again coach, and I work primarily with women and women that want to get their groove back. And at this time of the year, hello, at this time of the year, we're nearing fall. I'm in Canada. Parents are starting to think about going back to work. Some of them have already gone back to work, and some of them have children, and that's a concern. Whoever's viewing me right now, do you have children that are going to go back to school? You could type hello in the chat box. Let me know who you are. You might not have any children. So this is the big thing right now, is that parents are concerned, and there's a lot of unknowns. And in Canada, things are different than they are in other parts of the world, that's for sure. But nevertheless, the anxiety that some parents are feeling because of not really knowing what's going on, are they going to have daycare or not? Hello, thanks for joining me. That anxiety, and of course, possibly having to homeschool their children again. This is what's happening right now. And sometimes kids start school in August. I know a lot of us in Ontario, they start in the beginning of September, right after the long weekend. But nevertheless, people are already thinking about it. And please type your name in the chat box. That way I know who's watching me and I can say hello. So that's what I want to talk about, is this managing your kind of anxiety while you're having to deal with a lot of unknowns. And I think the quickest thing, because I want these tips to be very practical, the quickest thing is to, first of all, know what is in your control and know what's not in your control, right? I mean, I know it sounds so easy and, everybody talks about it, but it's true. A lot of what's happening now is not in your control. You don't know how many students will be able to go in class, when they'll be able to go. The government has, they need to make some final decisions on that. So there's a lot of stuff that's out of your control. But the one thing that is in your control is, of course, you. I know it sounds really simple. You breathing, right? You taking a nice deep breath. And I'm going to stop here for a few minutes. I'd like you to join me as I take a nice deep breath. So take a moment to just pause with me. This is, quarter to 5. You might be finishing work. Just take a moment right now. And I do invite you to close your eyes. Now, I don't have any quieting music or anything like that right now on this live. So we're just going to close our eyes and start with a nice deep breath. Now, go along with me. I'm going to be doing this with you. All right, this is live. We're going to be doing this together. And just keep breathing. Just keep breathing. Take another nice deep breath. That's right. And just go to your natural breathing. You'll notice that you're breathing. And the reason I'm suggesting that you do this with me is because oftentimes we say, yeah, I'll look at the video after, but you don't, because you're busy with other things. So right now, as I'm speaking, just close your eyes if they're not already done so, and just notice your breath. That's it. And you might notice thoughts coming in and out. especially if you're preoccupied with what's happening and what might be happening. Acknowledge those thoughts and go back to your breath. Put your attention on your breath. This is being mindful. This is being in this very moment. And I'm opening my eyes right now. And this is so important. Hi, Vonda. This is so important, right? Whether whether you have children, you have to take care of them, or whether you are back at work and you're noticing that you're already starting to kind of get caught up with it. In March, when we were all told that this was going to be happening and was happening, we hesitated. We were reluctant to get into the swing of things because, like we had a life and some of us lost their jobs as a result of all of that. So we were reluctant into getting into this new normal. And it's been months now. And I am telling you that I'm not a clairvoyant by any means, but depending on where you live, maybe things are a little bit more normal, but maybe not. I have some colleagues that live in India. I was with a colleague from India on Saturday morning, and I'm going to be doing a webinar with them. It isn't in a few months from now. It's actually on August 22nd. And they are going through a difficult time, right? So wherever you are in the world, we are all affected by it one way or the other. And the breath is the one thing. Oh, there's dancing too. We'll talk about that in a second. But the breath and closing your eyes and paying attention to what's happening is the only thing that we could all do, especially if we're still all healthy. And noticing this craziness that's going on in our minds. Noticing it, and I'm going to suggest journaling it too, journaling about it. Because if you are preoccupied, if you are concerned, then it's nice to talk about it, all right? Now, I'm live. You can't really talk to me about this right now, but you can certainly write a few comments if you'd like. Because I know what it's like to be preoccupied about stuff. My friend, the lady that I was walking with this morning, is preoccupied. She's more preoccupied right now about her son. Different stuff is going on, but still, okay? When we notice that we're preoccupied, we're not always present in the moment and not always appreciating the moment, this very moment. Now, I don't know if Vonda's still here, but Vonda participated in my 5-day challenge, and we did all sorts of interesting things where we were able to savor. And I know Vonda savored that green bean or yellow bean or whichever one you chose to do. And that's what it's about. It is about being aware that if I take a moment right now, this is all I have right now, take a moment right now to breathe, stop, breathe, notice what's happening. And if it is about savoring, because that was such a fun activity, or, actually today I went, after our walk, my friend and I went for a walk, we went to Second Cup, and I got a new type of latte. It's an oat milk latte. Now, did I savor it? I was talking with my friend, but I tell you, I noticed, I still have a little bit in my cup because I brought it home and put it in my cup. I noticed that it tastes different. When you go through your life very, very quickly, go, we don't even notice what things taste like anymore. That is something you have in your control. All right. So if you are preoccupied with what's happening with the kids and this and that and work, at the very least, you can breathe. And at the very least, you can take a moment to savor. And, when you are aware of the importance of doing that, you are more apt to do it. And I don't think anybody's perfect. Nobody's going to be savoring all the time, and nobody's going to be breathing all the time. No. I mean, life around us is a little bit crazy. But when you notice that you're going a little crazy, you might go, okay, hang on a second here. Give me a second. Give me a second. Stop this madness and take a breath and center yourself and be here. Be present. And you might notice, I'm not married. I'm single. But a lot of you might be married. And it's so easy, especially right now with the kids going to school and going back to work and all that stuff. It's so easy to get caught up in discussions or heavy-duty conversations or even arguments. And sometimes when we're arguing with somebody, we're not. Yeah, thanks, Vonda. We're not present. We're not present when we're arguing. We are caught up with whatever crapola is going on in here, and we're not breathing, and we're just gabbing. And sometimes saying things that we don't really mean. So what I'm going to suggest is noticing, because, when you take a moment to breathe, you notice, maybe you're noticing some different sensations. Maybe you're noticing a little bit of anxiety, and you're noticing you're a little bit angsty, and you want to wake up and you want to get up and you want to move around and kind of distract yourself. When you notice that, that's when you take a breath. Just take a breath, because when you start taking a breath or even 2 breaths, if you've done it with me. Oh, thanks, Rosemond. Thank you for your comments. If you take a breath, you'll notice yourself slowing down. And then you can have a conversation, right? A conversation that might not be a reaction to something. When you take a breath and you slow down, and this is some of the stuff that we talked about on Saturday with my colleague from India, and one of the things I'll be doing in one of the webinars is that gap in between. It sometimes it's a very brief gap, but when you're breathing and you continue to do this is not just a one-time thing, right? I'm working on a webinar right now, and I've got a 4-week program coming up that I'll be talking a little bit more about on the webinar, just a little bit. But when you practice mindfulness, that's just one of the things that's important when it comes to self-care. When you practice mindfulness, it takes a bit of time to kind of, get into it and develop the habit of stopping and taking 15 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever it is amount of time. I've been doing mindfulness meditation for thank you, Rosemond, for 3 years. And why did I do that? Well, about 3 years ago, maybe a little bit more, I had a concussion. I had a car accident. And a couple of days after the car accident, I'm noticing that I can't really talk and the words weren't coming. It was so weird. So I decided to go to the doctor, and the doctor told me, that I had a slight concussion, and she told me, go back home and you can't do nothing for 2 weeks. And I'm thinking, are you freaking kidding me that I can't do nothing for 2 weeks? Whoop. It was crazy, because I was at the time, I was still working full time, a busy consultant, man. Like, I don't have time for doing nothing. Anyways, I was still working at the time. And secretively, I was kind of really hoping that I could go on a sick leave, but this just happened, okay? So two weeks of nothingness, but I discovered mindfulness meditation at the time. And basically, mindfulness meditation is doing nothing but noticing. And so, I practiced that. And, I took an 8-week course where I was with other people who were learning to be mindful and so on. And I took a teacher training. So that's why I talk a lot about it. But it's so important. It's so important. You want to start with just stopping and taking a breath. The other thing that I also talked about just a few minutes ago was savoring the moment, right? Savoring that moment, saving the opportunity. You know, the kids are going back to school at some point. And maybe you are preoccupied with what's happening or with what's happening with work and so on. But this very moment that you have right now, that's all you have. And so sit back and enjoy and soak it in. Soak it in. And you might want to even take a little snapshot, not necessarily with your telephone or your camera, but with your mind. Kind of go click, take a snapshot of this memory, because this memory, the one that you're experiencing, will later on be a memory. And that memory is going to be super helpful to you, especially when it's challenging, you're going through a challenging time. The last thing that I'm going to suggest is that you focus on what's right. That's so important. Focus on what's right. Write down a list of things that you're grateful for and do that every day. You might want to start the morning with writing yourself a list of what you're grateful for. You might want to end the day and think about what was right. And I'll tell you, at the beginning, you might have a hard time trying to think what's right. You really would have a hard time. But so it does require having to think, okay, what was right? Well, I woke up. That's good. Or, you know, I had a great walk. All right, that's great. So you might have to really stretch yourself to think what's right. You might have to really think a little bit out of that box to think of what you're grateful for. At the very beginning, it might be really challenging for you. All right, so that's the truth. And so you might just write a few things down, but I challenge you to do it every day. Continue to do it. And next thing you know, it's like, and I've developed that muscle now. I've been doing this for a long time, and I still get frustrated. Okay, like I'm not perfect by any means. I still get frustrated, and I still got to talk about my frustrations. But I talk about it. I don't yell about it. I choose how I respond. But that's a practice that that takes a little bit of time, right? Oh, that's great, Lane. Thank you for being here. Sorry, I haven't been putting the comments on there. I'm just so caught up. So yeah, that moment. And can you tell me exactly what you needed to hear right now if you're still on the line, Lane? What message was it that you needed to hear right now? If you could write that down. I really appreciate your comments. So focus on what's right. That's the last tip that I'm going to suggest to you, because believe me, it's so easy peasy to think of what's wrong. And of course, when we start thinking of what's wrong, and that's kind of put part of the challenge that my friend was going through, you have to remember that our thoughts are kicked in by these beliefs that we have that we don't really know sometimes that we have that belief or not, but it's there, right? We have these beliefs that are driving our thoughts, and our thoughts are driving the emotions, and all of a sudden you start noticing, oh, I'm getting pissed off, or I'm getting angry. And of course, when you've got those emotions, that leads to behaviors. Right? That could lead to behaviors. And that's why, arguments happen with family members and with the kids that are wanting to go back and getting yancy with all that kind of stuff. So by practicing quietness and taking a moment over time, you go, okay, I'm noticing this. Great. That's great if you're noticing that. Anyways, I wanted to talk a little bit about that, about what I'm noticing, and that people are starting to get a little bit anxious right now again. And I want to, what do you mean behaviors in retail are important? Do you mean, you might want to chat a little bit more about that, Vonda, because I worked in retail, okay? I've got the degrees and all that stuff, but there was a time in my life that I needed to find a job. And I worked in retail. I worked in a health food natural health food store. And if, well, I mean, you work in retail, everybody's coming at you. Yeah, trying to do what's right. Everybody's coming at you. They're walking in, they might be frustrated. And you, as a customer service clerk or in retail or in management or whatever you do, Vonda, you got to keep it together, right? You got to keep it together. So if you don't, well, you know what can easily happen when you don't keep it together. But it's even more important because you are your business, whether you own the business or not. And I'm just reading I'm just going to put this up here, Vonda, making sure people obey the rules. Yes. And now it's even more challenging. I know. So, having to respect the rules, respect, the individuals that are coming into your retail store, and having to maintain your calm. We're all in this together. So that's why practicing what I've just suggested a few minutes ago is so important, even more so important for people who, yeah, exactly. You'll get fired, man, because, if you don't treat your customers right, they're not going to come back. And it's a very sensitive issue right now because guess what? Companies are just starting up again. Retail stores are just coming up again. We have to get these people in our store and purchasing things and so on. Otherwise, forget the business, right? So it's even more important. That's what I mean. It's even more important that you take care of yourself. Whoever works with people, I work with people. I know I wasn't planning on being here for that long, but what the heck? I've worked with people all of my life. Yep, all of my life. I'm just trying to think here. Yeah. Even when I worked as a lunch counter waitress years ago, my very first job. Yeah, that's right. My very, very first job, well, one of my first jobs, sorry. One of my first jobs, I was a lunch counter waitress in a bowling alley. I lived in Sudbury at the time. I'm a Sudbury girl. I've been in the Ottawa area since 2007. But I worked in a lunch counter, and believe me, at 6 o'clock in the bloody morning, people aren't always in a good mood because they're coming back from the bars, right? Because I worked night shift at a restaurant in a bowling alley. And, oh man, yeah. So if I didn't, and I was only 17, 18, 19, I worked there for 5 years. That's, 17 to 22. If I lost it, these people who came in every bloody day at 6 o'clock would not have come in. So, of course, it's important. Anybody who works with people, you have to practice the tips that I've suggested. Anyways, I've went on for a little longer than what I was expecting, but thank you for being here. Now, I'm going to be to those that participate in the 5-day Take Time for You Now challenge. I'm finalizing my webinar now. I'll be sending an email about that, and I'll be adding a link to this live as soon as I'm finished because I've got some, an interesting program that I want to offer you as well. It's called Rediscover You and Start Loving Your Life Again. It's all about self-care. And I think self-care is so important right now. So that's why I developed a program, 4-week program, all about self-care. So I'll talk a little bit more about that on the webinar, and you'll see the link below in this live as well. Thank you for being here, and talk to you soon. Have a great end of your evening. Bye now, everybody.